morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, September 22nd. And if you've been with us before, you know that I'm a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them increase their sales. And I founded the Sales Pro Network 3 years ago to elevate the profession of sales, to give professional salespeople and anyone who sells a place where they can come, hang out, network with each other, learn, ask questions, get great advice and coaching. And if you've been with us before, you probably know that every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, I either do a training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. And I think you're going to be fascinated by who we have today. Before I introduce our guest, if you are watching us live, please say hello in the comments. If you're watching us live on Facebook and have not connected your account to StreamYard, it's not going to say your name. It'll just say Facebook user. So please include your name. If you have any questions for our guest during today's broadcast, please put those in the comments and I'll pass them along. And finally, if you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the founder and CEO of Humantic.ai, where they're helping sales teams to humanize selling. Please meet Amarpreet Kalkat. Good morning, Amarpreet.
Good morning, Jeff. It's a pleasure to be talking to you today and looking forward to an exciting conversation.
I am too. And is it morning where you are? You're in Bangalore right now, right?
I am in Bangalore. It's evening, 7:32 p.m. and it's Friday. My team's waiting for me to grab a drink, suppose this.
Well, we're going to get to the questions then, and so that you guys can go out and grab a drink. That sounds like fun. I've got a few hours before we can do that. Can we start out maybe with the 2 or 3 minute version of what was your past? What brought you up to this point?
Yeah, absolutely. I started out as I like to call it a build guy, building products, technology products. I've been a technology, person for a long, long time, 20 years. This is my second SaaS startup, second AI startup. Surprisingly, I've not started AI in 2022 or 2023. I started around 2014. And my last startup was a consumer intelligence company. So working with B2C brands, telling them what's happening about their brand on social media, what did people love, what did people hate. One of the things, Jeff, we started diving deeper into was how do people make decisions? How do they decide what do they want to buy, why they want to buy, how much money to spend, so on and so forth. And that led us to building a personality and behavior prediction module based on just people's online data. And then at some point, we started finding ourselves using that for selling, using that even for hiring. And that's what led to what became Humantic AI. So where now we work with salespeople, we help salespeople walk into meetings, knowing their prospects as they would, in a traditional world where you're meeting someone face to face and you get to know them deeply. So we bring that depth to salespeople understanding each other.
Well, I can't wait to hear more about that, and I've got plenty of questions about it. But before I do that, good morning to my dear friend Ellen Volpe. Good morning to John Hill, who says, I'm looking forward to hearing from Amarpreet. And good morning, Don Levine, our executive recruiter. So, Amarpreet, everybody's talking about AI. I mean, for months and months now, it's been the conversation. It's come into the real world. I mean, I'm sure you've been talking about it for years, but it's now really come mainstream. Salespeople are concerned, because I get this question all the time, Jeff, am I going to lose my job? They're concerned that they're going to lose their jobs. Do you think selling will change drastically in an AI first world world? And if so, in what ways?
Will selling change drastically? I think yes. I think it will change drastically. I think a lot of things will change drastically. AI, I don't know if it's good news or bad news. AI still has a way to go. So it's a weird. I'm gonna make statements that will probably sound conflicting, but essentially they are nuanced. Hopefully that's what people would see through. AI is still getting there. It's not there. There's a lot of buzz. Normally gets ahead of itself. I don't think things are going to just happen like tomorrow. Yeah, but I do believe that it's a pretty pivotal shift. So the change will be drastic. I think some of the wisdom out there is pretty much on point. For example, people often say that AI will not take away jobs. Sellers who know how to use AI will take away jobs of sellers who don't know how to use AI. So I think that's going to be the dominant theme. There's some research, I think Goldman Sachs or someone put it out there. I think it's not too far from probably the truth, which says that 63% of the jobs will become AI assisted and 7% or so will get replaced. So my point being that AI assisting people is going to be the dominant theme. Uh, Jobs will, however, get replaced. Let's not fool ourselves into thinking they will not, but far fewer will get fully replaced. Often there's a shift that happens. You're doing things this way and you now start doing things that way. Those who don't shift, they tend to suffer from job losses.
So it sounds like you're saying that salespeople should be less concerned about losing their jobs and more concerned about how do we take advantage of and use these new tools in a way that will help us sell better. And those that don't, like with so many other revelations or revolutions, they got left behind. Is that correct?
Pretty much. Let me qualify, because that's otherwise it doesn't really help a listener who's listening to if we say yes, that is true. See, we can look at the last 500 years. Technology is not new. AI is nothing but a new kind of technology. Yeah, more exponential maybe than some of the previous technologies, but that's how it always is. Internet was more exponential than industrial revolution, for example, right? So are we jobless because agriculture got replaced with industries and machinery?
No.
We all have jobs. We have more jobs than we ever had. We're all better off. We all live much better lives. Our lives will keep getting better.
So it's really more like people still ride
That
horses,
is
but
how
other
it
people drive
is.
cars.
But yes, the nature changes, but we are all better off, and we will be better off in the future too. But the nature of the job will change. That's what we got to be ready for. That change is the evolution.
Got it. Perfect. Good morning, Ray Aurora. Ellen has a question, and I have a million questions about that later on, but we'll bring it up now. Do you think that the nature of relationships will be more or less important as AI develops?
That's a good nuanced, I think, question. Will it be more or less important? Let's see. I, so, and it sort of brings back to what we do at Humantic AI and how I started out. So I'm a huge believer in the power of technology to help take us, forward. It just helps us evolve faster. But I also think that technology by default tends to put distance between people. That's just a side. I mean, imagine if you and I, Jeff, was sitting in a cafe having this conversation. It would be a richer conversation. Odds are we'll talk about our families, our kids, our interests, our hobbies. On Zoom calls, there's research showing that we just get to the point. Let's get to the point, right? We don't connect as humans. We just connect more transactionally. So, to your question, yes, AI will put distance between people. It does that, but sometimes that makes us take action. Like that's what we are trying to do at Humantic AI. We are saying, why don't we use technology to bring people closer? Because guess what? I saw Jeff's Humantic profile. It tells me that Jeff is someone who's likely to be livelier, informal, and we can have a more energetic conversation. When I know that, Jeff, you and I can connect a lot better than me not knowing that about you. So yes, by default, it weakens relationships, unfortunately. But if we can take action, it could essentially lead to strengthening. Counterintuitive as it might seem.
Yeah, and when I was doing my research, I was thinking that exact same thing. So I don't think the importance of relationships is going to be lessened at all, or the nature. It's just that we have a tool that will help us. Humantic AI seems like a tool specifically designed for that. How do we create and nurture those relationships that we may not be doing face to face anymore by using tools that can help us predict who we're speaking to and how to interact with them better? Is that correct?
Yes. So imagine you're living in one country and your parents are living in another country. Technology probably will bring you closer, yeah, instead of not having technology, right? So it's kind of a dichotomy that you need to understand. Um, Relationship doesn't become weaker, but you can use technology to actually strengthen it up. Otherwise, it might not go the same way.
Got it. So what exactly is buyer intelligence, and why does it make sense to be emphasizing that now?
So buyer intelligence is the ability to know your buyers, the people. So for a salesperson, people, we all say, right? People buy from people, and people buy from people that they trust. The question is, what do we know about the people on the other side of the table? Their LinkedIn profile? What else do we know beyond their LinkedIn profile? Today, nothing, right? And LinkedIn profile, knowing where you worked or what college you went to, it doesn't do a lot to bring us close. It doesn't. But that's important part, right? Knowing people. That's what buyer intelligence is all about. It's about knowing your buyers, the people, not just the company and the need, but the buyer and their want. So that's buyer intelligence.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because you know, I've been selling for almost 50 years, and certainly many things have changed over those 50 years. But I consistently tell salespeople one thing that has not changed over the last almost 50 years: people still do business with people they trust. It's essential. Why would anybody give anyone else money to buy a product or service unless they trust that they're going to deliver and service and all those good things? So I'm with you 1,000,000%. But here's a question: why do we need one more sales intelligence tool? Aren't there enough already? I mean, it seems like the market's flooded.
Correct. Correct. There's a plethora of tools out there. I think it goes back to the basics. So what we're talking about, uh, people and people being important. As see, take a Zoom call, like I said earlier. A Zoom call is selling on a Zoom call instead of selling in person. It's like going from a three-dimensional world to a two-dimensional world, right? It's just how it is. And I know a lot less about you. And it becomes critical at that point of time because I know a lot less. The chance to build that trust, that rapport, becomes a lot less. And most of the tools out there, most of the tools, they are not really focused on helping you build trust, or let's call it the art of selling. I can say, Jeff, pretty much this: almost all the tools, or maybe all the tools, are focused on improving the science of selling, not the art of selling, not the people, not the trust. Who helps you establish trust? Salesloft, they just help you send more emails, Outreach, Salesforce, you name it. And it's not about people. Our belief is, and that's what we're living, that especially as the age of AI dawns upon us, that need to connect with people is gonna become vital. It's absolutely heading in that direction. So that need to focus on the art of selling, that need to focus on building trust. I was speaking to a large company sales operations leader, and he said, "Hey, we are evaluating Microsoft Copilot. Why should we look at Humantic AI?" I said, "Does Copilot help you know your buyers and build trust? Tell me one tool that helps you do that." So that is fundamental, as you and I are saying, right? People buy from people that they trust, and there's literally nothing else out there that helps you enhance, we call it speed to trust.
I got it. So everyone has heard of ChatGPT. That's the big one that everybody knows. What's the difference between ChatGPT and Humantic AI?
Well, I've got a beautiful example. So Sam Altman, who's OpenAI CEO, yeah, I wish I could share my screen, but a couple of weeks ago, he sent out a tweet. He says, "Hey, ChatGPT, I'm Sam Altman. Please talk to me in concise language and use fewer words, and don't use very formal or very, flowery kind of language." I know you are trained on using formal language, etc., etc. And I actually tweeted back to Sam Altman. I said, hey, it seems like you need to use Humantic AI, right? Because we know exactly how you should be speaking to every single person, billions of people out there. I can tell you, for example, in your case, Jeff, the right language would not be just concise to the point. It will be something with more energy, with more excitement, with more maybe even relationship and love rather than just value. So that's why if you everyone's bringing in chat gpt and generative ai, and we are just going from manual spam to automated spam, so to speak. But we need to put the person back in the conversation, and we have that. ChatGPT doesn't have it today. That's the difference.
I see. So you say that you're number two in the sales AI world. What does that really mean?
Yeah, I mean, rankings are rankings, but I think most of us are familiar with G2. So G2 is, they do this whole tools review and whatnot. So they published this grid called Momentum Grid. So and there are various categories. One of the categories is sales AI tools, sales AI assistants, I think they call it. It has 200 plus sales AI products, everything from HubSpot, Salesforce to whatnot. So on that one, we are number two. We are number two on overall momentum. We are number three on results and number two on usability. So number two, that's what we're talking about. 2023 sales AI tools that are catching momentum. We are on G2, number two in the world.
I see. Well, there used to be a famous commercial for Avis Rent a Car that said, "We're number two. We try harder." So
We
maybe
try
that's
harder.
what's going on.
Yes.
John
Yeah.
Hill has a question for you. Boy, oh boy, this is going to be tough to unpack. There's a long answer for this, John, I think. But John wants to know, how do you use AI in a sales situation?
So, John, as Jeff said, there's a long answer. I think we'll do the short answer, and I'll give you an example. I think that's the best thing. So a few days ago, I was walking into a meeting. There were two participants, and the one who had set up the meeting, Humantic showed me, her profile. It sends actually an email when you connect your calendar to Humantic. It sends you an email 15 minutes before a meeting, and it said that she was someone who was a little reserved and not very vocal, whereas the other person Humantic predicted was going to be leading the conversation. We go in and same starts happening. But now, because I know she's not going to be very vocal, I go into the call and I'm like, hey, I guess you will have some questions. Does this make sense? Is there something more you like to understand? So I am putting in extra effort to engaging her, because guess what? If I don't do that, I am not cultivating a champion, right? But knowing that she was not going to be vocal and I had to put in extra effort is now improving the odds of having two champions instead of one, or at least not having a detractor who doesn't fully understand my product. So that's kind of the core. Whether you're walking into a meeting or you're writing an email, so we have this email assistant that combines our knowledge of every person with generative AI, and the emails it writes, they they are personalized for every individual, and on the average they convert 109% more on the average. So those are a couple of use cases, John, to your question. Any interaction you having, whether it's email, whether it's a call, or it's a social interaction, you will walk in knowing your prospects better.
So yes, look, I'm nowhere near an AI expert, although I'm trying very hard to learn as much as I can, as quickly as I can. And John, like, if you want to write an email, you may be the most articulate person in the world and really good at crafting emails, but many people are not. And if you go to something like ChatGPT or any of these AI systems, you can type in you can give it instructions. I want an email designed to do this to this type of person, and it'll write it for you. But it sounds to me, Amarpreet, like Humantic AI goes way beyond that. It's more about, how do I figure out my buyer persona? How do I understand the person that I'm selling to, which I don't think ChatGPT can do in a million years.
ChatGPT has no knowledge of the person, which is the big gap. That's what we bring to the table, right? So if you ask ChatGPT a question like, "Hey, I'm gonna be in New York. What are the best places for vegan food? Right? It's gonna give you the same answer, irrespective of who you are. But if Humantic was in the picture, just again, I'm taking a non-sales example just to tell you, you how to put the person in any query and any conversation and any pitch. So with Humantic, that answer starts changing because now we might know, something about every individual, and it can be a more personalized answer.
Perfect. We have another question. Ray Aurora wants to know, in the example that we gave a moment ago, what allowed Humantic AI to bring information about that quiet individual? Was it through the calendar invite, or how does it actually get that information?
So our input data comes from LinkedIn. Our AI engine, it picks up 160 signals about any person from their LinkedIn. I'll give you an easy example because now AI, we talk about, multi-dimensional vector space, etc., etc. But easy example, if someone has given a lot of recommendations versus another person who has not, what does it say about them? Probably the person who's given a lot of recommendation is friendlier and more agreeable because they're like, okay, fine, I'll give you a recommendation, compared to all other things being equal. So, and that is true, by the way, our correlation shows that people who give more recommendations tend to be slightly more agreeable. Imagine 160 such signals from your language use. There's 35 years of research, dozens of research papers, thousands of citations people don't know. There's the non-language part, like the example that I just gave you. My about me is 10 words, and there are people whose about me is 300 words. What does it mean? It means something, right? So those are the kind of signals that the AI is able to put together. LinkedIn acts as kind of that, we say catchment area, data catchment area. From there, we can predict your disk profile. So those of you who are familiar with disk, and then we can leverage that disk profile to advise a salesperson what to do in an opening call, closing call, how to write an email, so on and so forth.
Yep, great. I want to talk about Disc in a little bit, but um, so it sounds like I go to a LinkedIn profile before I'm going to meet with a prospect. I check out their profile. I learn some things. They like horses. They follow Tony Robbins. They worked at these different companies for this length of time. But you're saying Humantic AI actually takes a look at 160 different data points inside somebody's profile and is able to glean that information and give us valuable information that we can use to then understand that type of buyer.
Correct. Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, and you have two recommendations for salespeople, right? What are those recommendations?
Tool recommendations?
I thought you said you had two recommendations you wanted to make to salespeople. No.
Okay, no, I heard that as tool recommendations. So I was like, tool or two, so it seems you're saying two, TW, or two recommendations. Two recommendations for salespeople. I think, and that's one of the lessons I have learned, over time. Uh, the first one is we should just be authentic, right? In whatever we do, we tend to get into a mode because we all want to sell, right? Ultimately, our job is to sell, but we can still sell while being authentic. If I genuinely feel I cannot do anything for you, I should just call it out. And my learning is that the best selling happens when you're not selling. The best selling is when you're not selling. You actually just having a real conversation, trying to understand someone's problem and saying, hey, look, maybe this is something we can do. Maybe this is something we cannot do. Yeah. So our job is to sell, but yes, if you are convinced that you can help someone, then of course you should say, hey, look, this is why you should use me. So I think the first thing I would really say is, to be authentic. And second thing I would say is, it's some similar lines, but instead of trying to do more, which it feels counterintuitive, but I think we should try to do less. Everyone's got enough spam in their email inbox and LinkedIn inbox and whatnot. I don't think we're helping anyone. So I was reading this book recently called The Sales Innovation Paradox. I loved an analogy. It says selling is equivalent to the modern dust bowl, because that's what happened 100 years ago, in you know uh, Midwest out there, I think, or Southwest. So farm equipment, machinery came in. For 15, 20 years, it was the best thing ever because productivity shot up. And 20 years later, the topsoil layers are gone, right? Because you've just destroyed it. And I think that's what's been happening in selling, courtesy all the automation. When we send those 1,000 emails out, we're not only hurting ourselves, we're also hurting all the sellers out there. So I think we could all do with a little bit less, a little bit more researched, a little bit more prepared. I think those are maybe two things that we could do as salespeople, for ourselves and for other sellers.
Yeah, those are both great. And I can't tell you how much I love that you said authenticity. As a sales coach, I've ridden in the field with salespeople on sales calls and observed them, and I listen to them on the phone or watch them on Zoom calls. And I can't tell you how many times we've gotten done with a sales call, and I've turned to somebody who I'm coaching, who was just in that sales call, because that's not the person I know. They put on what I call the business voice or the business attitude, and I'm certainly not saying that people
Yeah,
should be unprofessional, but just be you. People, you and I said it before, people do business with people that they trust, and of course, the old phrase is people like and
yeah,
trust, and of the two, the trust is more important. But if you're being a phony, if you're trying to be some business person that's not really who you are, people can smell that, and people do
people can
want to do
smell it.
business with people. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Ellen wants to know, how accurate is your system?
we say 80 to 85%, and I believe it is 80 to 85%. So we could be wrong one or maybe two times out of 10, but we are right 8 times or 8+ times out of 10. So 80 to 85, really.
That's not a bad ratio. What are some of the limitations of AI?
I think probably the biggest limitation really is data, right? So AI leverages data. So no data, no AI, I think is as simple as that. And we see that. So for example, I've been in meetings where, let us say you're selling to private equity, and because our data comes from LinkedIn, and a lot of private equity people are not on LinkedIn. There's nothing that we can do. So having said that, people have a misconception that you need tons and tons of data. You need, well, you need tons and tons of data for training the algorithms, training the AI. For predicting, you actually don't. And even that is changing today. So again, that people don't know unless you're on the technical side in AI. Even that's changing. For example, with Chat GPT, etc., you hear about terms like you know one shot learning or few shot learning, which means you can train the AI with very very few examples, very very few examples. So data is really the biggest limitation of AI. And second probably is, again, goes back to, I think, the same theme. uh, Using it judiciously, I think that's something we have to be careful about. So there's a lot of conversation around that area, but using it in the right manner, responsibly, because it's powerful. It's very powerful. It will keep becoming more and more powerful. So I think those are probably the two most important points I would keep in mind.
Got it. And we hear mostly about generative AI. What's the difference between generative AI and personality AI?
So generative AI is the whole Chat GPT. Everything is generative AI. Fundamentally, the word generative, it generates by and large text, also images, right? Images or videos too, but it generates, let's just call it content. Yeah. So generative AI is generating content of text, audio, or video, form by and large. Personality AI is about leveraging that content or content about people to learn more about them, their behavior, their personality. So personality AI is very, very people focused. It's all about learning more about people, whereas generative AI is a lot more about generating content easily and probably better, right? So faster and better content. It's not about learning about people in any manner, not really at all.
Gotcha. Okay, so now that we understand that, what's the difference between assistive AI and replacive AI?
So I think those are two uh, you know two groups you can break AI into, especially when we talk about AI in the jobs context, right? So we spoke about jobs earlier. People are very apprehensive. There's a lot of concern. So especially from a jobs perspective, when we look at AI, we can break it into those parts. Assistive AI primarily assists humans in being more effective or more efficient, effective and efficient. Whereas replacive AI replaces, humans with purely AI. Now, while I'm calling them two different groups, but in some ways they are on a continuum. They're not entirely different things. They are on a continuum. On one side, you have assistive AI that helps us be more effective. But on the other, so same, for example, ChatGPT at some level can be assistive. It can help a writer write better. But at the other end, it could turn replacive where you don't need that writer anymore. It really depends on the kind of writing. So I'll add one more thing. What many people don't know, generative AI for a lot of people is new. It's like, oh, we found generative AI in 2022. But some of the earlier iterations of generative AI have been around for like at least 7, 8 years, or maybe 8 to 10 years. Like I remember a company called Narrative Science that a lot of media publications have been using for 10 years to write AI generated content and articles. It just did not use LLMs as the kind of the underlying model. It wasn't that intelligent. So it was a previous iteration, but generative AI itself is not new. It's just that it's suddenly, gotten on the horizon.
It's going more mainstream, and everybody's hearing about it now. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
got it. So I think you and I are in agreement that we should be using what I call a blended approach to prospecting. It's not just email, it's not just texting, it's not just calls, a blended approach. How can we use personality AI to personalize our sales communications?
So if I have to make my answer easy, I would say wherever you feel the need, you like, oh, what can I know about Jeff? I think personality AI can play a role, because at a fundamental level, it's nothing but you know an insight into who you are, what matters to you, what language is right for you, right? So it's an ability for me to adapt myself to you, sometimes at the cost of becoming uncomfortable. I've heard that from people that uh, the AI advises you to talk in a language. Like, I'll give you an example. So I tend to be very direct and to the point, like, just get to the point, man, just get to the point. And sometimes it'll advise me to be more formal and go like, hello, Jeff, I hope you're doing well today. The day's been great. I feel very weird because that's not me. And we all want to be ourselves, right? So it's a weird thing. And sometimes I've got that question, hey, if I'm talking in slightly different language, am I not being authentic? That's not the point. See, we all adapt all the time. When we're talking to our parents, we're not talking the same way as we're talking to our kids or our partners, or our friends, and we do adapt. Adapting is, authenticity goes away when we do something that is you know not that is disingenuous, let's just say, right? So that's what it is about it. Adapting is not being inauthentic. So that discomfort that sometimes you might feel, right? That's and I have seen that firsthand. So when I'm not when I have to talk in someone else language.
So, you know, nobody wants to deal with a robot, as a human who acts like a robot or a real robot. So when we use any type of AI, should we be just using whatever it spits out, or should we take the time to review it and personalize it, or humanize it?
I think right now we are at a point where it's better to review. Like, even in our product, that is the principle we follow. So while we could automate, messages to, let's say, a lot of people, but we we do it in a way that the user has a chance to review it, because I don't think the AI is that mature. Uh, Longer term, I think it'll keep changing, but overall, I would still, like, I'm a big believer in, the power of assistive AI, or AI plus human combining, rather than AI replacing. In some fields it will replace, and in some fields not, but generally I think the combination is going to be more powerful, although it'll vary by use case and context is ultimately what will happen.
Gotcha. Okay. So you mentioned DISC before, and while I'm familiar with it, could you just please explain quickly what is DISC selling and how does Humantic AI relate to DISC?
So DISC is a personality assessment framework. It is a way to understand someone's personality. There are a whole bunch of personality assessment frameworks. Some of them are more popular than others. For example, a lot of people, I'm sure, on this call might have heard of MBTI. MBTI is probably the most popular one. Um, it's very popular, but it's not necessarily recommended in the professional context. If you talk to IO psychs or psychologists, then there is Big Five, or what's called Ocean. That's also very popular. So DISC is a personality assessment framework. There are four kind of axes. D is for dominant, I is for influential, S is for steady, and C is for, it's called conscientious sometimes and calculative sometimes. What does it mean? D type people are very, very task and goal oriented. Yeah, like focus on the output, focus on results. I type people are very people and relationship oriented, right? So feelings, etc., matter a lot more to them. D types, not so much. S type people are very procedural. They tend to be process oriented, and C type tend to be very information oriented, very analytical. And then you can combine these into, traditionally used to be 16 types. Now you can make it, like we do, 36 types. And that starts giving us a glimpse into someone's thought process. DISC is especially powerful in the communication context. For example, in the hiring context, psychometrics are used heavily. The most powerful framework is Big Five. Yeah, so which is a different framework. DISC is not as powerful, but DISC is very powerful for communication. So much so, and not everyone would know, 70% of Fortune 500 companies, their sellers are trained on DISC. 70%. So essentially, a vast majority of enterprise sellers, people who sell high value deals, they are trained on DISC, they're trained on psychology. Vista Equity Partners trains every salesperson on that. Miller Hyman trains people on DISC. Sandler trains people on DISC. Any large sales training company. So that's DISC. It's a way of assessing and understanding personality, which is very relevant in the communication context and hence very relevant for selling.
Hmm. So how does Humantic AI relate to DISC?
So DISC is essentially at the core of Humantic AI. So when we talk about understanding someone's personality and behavior, we take their data and we try to the first level is we try to predict their DISC profile. There's, like I said, there's 35 plus years of research that allows us to, helps us to do that. We are in that sense standing on the shoulders of giants. We are leveraging that research and productizing that research. Once we have that, now we know, as I said, that hey, if you D type, you're going to be very results oriented. So that we start turning into insights that can be acted upon by salespeople. Third level is when we take those insights and start applying that to generate or modify content. For example, an email template that you have, and you say, hey, can you change this email template for, Jeff, who's a DI personality type, and it knows that if earlier template had hello Jeff, maybe that's better off turning into hey Jeff. And if the earlier one had I hope you're doing well today, it's better off if you turn it into I hope you're having one heck of a day, etc., etc. So there's three levels to how we leverage this.
I gotcha. Now, I always go into people's LinkedIn posts to research for these, and there was something I found that was fascinating. You said that salespeople obsess with being a D type, D on the disc profile. I happen to be a high D. Can you explain why salespeople are so obsessed with being a D? And is it okay to not be a D? Can you still be successful in sales if you're not?
So I think D D is sort of the coolest kind of attribute, and especially I've seen a fascination with being a DI. DIs are the quintessential charismatic leaders. Yeah, you take like a Kennedy or a Clinton or an Obama, they would probably be DIs. So people like being that. That's our image of a sales leader. Not all salespeople need to be that or even can be that. Only 10% of the people in the world are D type. I do think more salespeople are D type, but that doesn't mean everyone is. Uh, Odds are, I have not tried, but odds are someone like a Sundar Pichai or Satya Nadella is not going to be a DI necessarily. Yeah, but I think they've still been fantastic salespeople. I mean, you don't become the CEO of Google unless you can sell yourself to begin with. So no, you don't need to be. Certain industries might need more of that than others, but you can very well be successful without being a D-type personality.
Yeah, this is a question I get regularly. Jeff, do I have to hire extroverts? Well, look, I happen to be extroverted, and I think if you are extroverted, it tends to make you more likely to succeed at sales. But I know lots of introverts and have worked with lots of introverts who are excellent at selling because they use that to their advantage. Not everybody's outgoing and in your face, and some people are more quiet and reserved, and a lot of people relate to that actually better.
There was a big research some 15, 20 years ago into like specifically the extroversion introversion axis, and actually what the results showed was that people who were slightly extroverted, or essentially somewhere in the middle of the introverted extroverted scale, slightly on the extroverted side, they were the most successful salespeople. And then again, there were a lot of exceptions. So fundamentally, because that used to be a very popular narrative earlier, it's a little bit like the D type thing that you have to be extroverted to succeed in selling. It's not true. It's not true.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
completely
enough
agree.
research now.
I
Yeah.
completely agree. And being aware of who I am, I'm a high D, I am an extrovert. I actually hold myself back a little, my personality, in many selling situations, because I know my personality can overpower people and then they shut down. So you have to be really aware that, no matter who you are, it's really how is the person perceiving you, because it goes back to that trust we were talking about before.
And yes, which is when we talk about talking in your buyer's language. I was talking to a CTO friend of mine today, just early a couple of hours ago, and we were just talking about this thing. And I was telling him, I said, so someone like you, Jeff, for example, I said, look, if a loud, extroverted salesperson showed up to sell you something, there's no way you're buying from that person. So we're talking about compatibility in selling, because odds are, if you, this friend of mine, if you say, hey, let's go grab a drink, we'll sit down and we'll figure this shit out and we're gonna kick ass, and he's gonna be sitting there thinking internally, oh, what a what a douchebag. Okay, that's because that person's gonna be sold to much better by someone who's like, hey, look, I know you'll have some questions, let me try answering those. I'm stereotyping, not every cto is like that and so on, but the point is, people are different. People are different. If we make a little bit of an effort to know them and adapt to them and just show that respect, we all come out as winners.
Love that. What is the always got to work perfectly problem? What is that?
What is what?
The always got to work perfectly problem? I saw that in one of
I
your LinkedIn posts that said it's a problem that something's always got to work perfectly. Does that relate to?
How? Okay, got you. Yeah, yeah. So nice one. I mean, Jeff, I appreciate you, looking into some of my posts. So I think that's giving us some good talking points, because these are things that have been on my mind. So this is again actually very important, I would say. Um, Most of, at least in the revenue space, and I suppose most of our listeners are going to be from the revenue space. See, most of the revenue space leaders who make decisions, they're not technologists generally, right? They salespeople. Some of them are technologists, so they're not really experts at evaluating technology. Now, there's a fundamental difference between AI and non-AI software, and that difference is that AI is essentially predictive. Like the question that someone asked me earlier, how accurate are you? Because we are predictive, we predict things. If it doesn't predict, it's not AI. I think that statement would by and large hold. But if it predicts, it will be wrong sometimes. Whereas traditional software could not be wrong. At worst, it might not work sometimes. Salesforce cannot be wrong, right? How can Salesforce be wrong? It might not work one fine day, but it cannot be wrong. Now, when people look at AI, and we've seen that it could be personality prediction, it could be a forecasting tool, it could be chat GPT that's creating content. Sometimes people say, oh, that is not right. No, 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 this is, we can't work with this. This is not right. It's a fundamental shift that predictive software, which is AI, is going to be wrong sometimes. We need to take a slightly holistic view because it's very different than the traditional software that we use to evaluating, which just could not be wrong.
So it sounds to me like predictive AI is kind of like a meteorologist on the TV news where they're predicting the weather. Often they get it right, but sometimes it's complete. It's going to snow tomorrow. It doesn't snow. It's not going to rain
That,
today. The next thing you know, you're in a downpour. And we just understand it. It's not an exact science. They can't predict 100% of the time.
that's exactly what it is.
Gotcha. You said something else that I thought was fascinating. You say that going after prospects who simply need our product is lazy. Why do you say that? And why should we be going deep to find prospects who value what we have to offer or want what we have to offer as opposed to simply needing it?
So I think that that applies more to someone like us. So I was probably talking about, in our context. See, there are established needs and latent needs. Yeah. So when we talk about people who need that thing, you're talking about someone who says, "Hey, um, I have a need for this thing," right? So, but there could be people who actually have value of your product. And if I am being a honest salesperson, I spoke about being an authentic salesperson. I could still talk to someone who's not really looking for my product and say, hey, look, this is something that will be valuable for you. Let me try showing you, let me try helping you understand how it is going to be. And that applies more to like what we call category creating, kind of products, not necessarily just software, that anything that's category creating, because there is a need, but it's a latent need, hence you don't really know that need. And it is about the value that you can bring to that kind of a customer.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear you say that because once again, we're in agreement. Um, most sales training methodologies teach you go find out the need. And if you can find the need and fill it, you get a customer. But excuse me, my belief all along has been that if you only search for needs, you're missing a lot of business that you could otherwise get. For me, of course, I want to uncover needs and I want to uncover pain. But what I'm really looking for when I'm selling and the way I teach people how to sell is just find out what they're doing now. Find out what people are doing now regarding what you have to sell them, because whatever they're doing now makes sense. And if you can show them a better way to do something, even though they
Yeah.
didn't think they had a need, they can become your customer. I worked with an organization very early on in my sales training career that sold telephone service. and they would call people up and try to sell telephone service. Well, guess what? They already had a telephone and they were already on the line with them. They didn't need a new telephone service. But when they asked a bunch of questions, they found that quite often they could get people to switch to their service because it was more reliable, less expensive, or whatever the benefits were. So yeah, I agree. When you only go after needs, I think you're going to miss a lot of business. And I think that's foolish. I mean, we all want to get as much business as we possibly can. There's something else that I was fascinated by. Last month, you made a post that said that developing an ideal client profile, an ICP, is a starting point, but not the final word. How do we drill down further to figure out who our buyer really is?
So we one module, part of the Humantic, product, or part of buyer intelligence, is about what we call ICP fine tuning. What that means is, traditionally we've thought of ICP as in largely demographic terms. My ICP is the CRO of a company in X space in Y location, whose employee size is between A and B, right, or X and Z. That's how we've thought about that. But we don't have to stop there, right? We could go deeper. One aspect of that we found to be pretty valuable is the personality aspect, because that's what we dig deep into. So what happens is that there are certain kind of people who tend to buy what you offer more. Take some examples. Let us say you're selling compliance software. Yeah, compliance software. All other things being equal, who's more likely to buy compliance software? If we think from a sort of a personality, axis, what do you think, Jeff? Who will that be?
Uh, what are the personality traits?
Yeah, from a personality perspective, who's more likely to buy compliance software?
An HR manager?
Personality perspective. So that's the role, right? And we think in terms of roles, exactly as you did. But an HR manager who's risk averse is more likely to buy a compliance software than a HR manager who's not risk averse. But now let's come to, for example, something that we do. Let us say you have a new kind of technology that's looking like it has very strong results, and but it's not proven yet. Who's more likely to buy that? Someone who's risk taking, right? Someone who takes risk and says, bloody hell, we'll see how it goes. Let's give it a shot. It's same as, so and we can start developing some of those themes. It's the same person, who might uh, decide to go and race motorcycles, instead of let us say developing a hobby where you're sitting at home and maybe watching sports. So someone is watching sports, someone's doing sports. So that is the aspect that we've seen that's very powerful when we start bringing that in. Typically you can identify which 20 to 30% of the people are likely to become 60 to sometimes even 80% of your customers. I mean, that's how strong the likelihood can be for certain kind of products. Some products are very generic and there is no dimension, but most of them, we've seen there is a clear enough personality dimension.
I gotcha. Okay. I'm looking at the time and I see, as usual, we're running out of time, and I've got 8 million more questions, and I know you have people waiting to have cocktails with you. So how about this last one? I know you're big on saying that when it comes to selling, it's important to emphasize feelings over facts. What does that actually mean?
So I think the exact language I picked up from Gartner. I think it was one of the keynotes at their last conference. I think earlier this year. So where they say that when people feel good, feel right, those then you tend to win 30% more often. So you close 30% more deals when you get feelings right and not just facts. And they've done a lot of research, spoken to a lot of people, and often enough it kept coming to I felt that in this case, which again ties back into that trust I mentioned that we spoke about earlier, and I think that we've all heard that. In fact, there was again a very popular research study by a Harvard professor that showed that 95% of the decisions tend to be emotional, but we all just justify them, rationally. So that's what we're talking about. That we tend to do what we feel is right, but we find a logical, rational explanation. You'll buy the car color that you like, but you'll probably find a good reason to say, okay, this is why this makes the most sense. So yeah, so feelings combined with facts do matter, but feelings when they combined with facts are a lot more effective than just pure facts.
So it really goes back to the old saying, people buy with emotion and back it up with logic. And when we understand that, then
Absolutely.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we go, is Humantic AI only for enterprise, or do individuals invest in it too, or is it only major companies that are buying this?
Oh no, absolutely. Individuals too. Like if you go to a website, anyone can, take up a 7-day free trial, and then if you like it, if you find it to be useful, and generally 7 days give you enough indication, you can purchase it even as an individual. It starts as low as um, $20 a month. Yeah, so you can very well. In fact, a lot of our customers, one person at a company buys it, and then three buy it, and then we talk to their sales leaders or they talk to their sales leaders. So you can very well use it as an individual.
And as it grows like that, we'll see Humantic AI taking over the world. I think you'll see my name as a user very shortly, because after doing my research for this interview and speaking with you, it sounds just fascinating, like an incredibly powerful tool. How can people reach you if they want to get in touch with you, and where can they find Humantic AI if they want to take that free trial?
So I'm the only Amarpreet Kalkat, at least so far. So if you just search for Amarpreet Kalkat, you'll find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn /Amarpreet Kalkat is me. So I'm very easy to find. Humantic AI, I think our website, humantic.ai is the best way to discover Humantic AI, learn more, and give it a try. Like I said, we have a free trial, and then see if it is the right kind of technology for you.
Well, I'm afraid, again, I could talk to you for hours and hours about this, but I know you've got to go, and so do I. Thank you so much for generously sharing your information with us. I really appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck with this. And I'll end as I always do, guys. Please remember that sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy your cocktails, Amarpreet. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.